Rain hammered against the windows long before sunrise. Claire Morgan stood alone inside her tiny apartment, watching cold droplets race each other down the glass, while Manhattan slowly disappeared beneath another gray morning. Her apartment wasn't beautiful. The walls were old. The pipes rattled every winter. The radiator worked only when it wanted to. But it was home. She smiled softly as she poured coffee into a chipped white mug decorated with tiny apples, one of dozens of gifts from her second-grade students over the years. Children didn't notice cracked walls. They noticed kindness. That was enough for her. Claire checked the clock. Enum adilban de las a. She slipped into her navy coat, wrapped a knitted scarf around her neck, and grabbed the stack of spelling tests she still needed to grade. Outside, the city breathed through rain. Taxi tires hissed across wet pavement. Steam curled from subway vents. The familiar smell of roasted coffee mixed with damp concrete followed her down the block. As always, Mr. Alvarez was sweeping the apartment lobby. "Morning, Miss Morgan. Morning. You work too hard." She laughed. "So everyone keeps telling me, you deserve a vacation. I'll settle for Friday." They both smiled. Life was simple, predictable, safe, exactly how Claire liked it. She had spent years building a life no one could take away, or so she believed. The elementary school buzzed with its usual morning chaos. Backpacks, sticky fingers, half-finished homework, tiny voices shouting across hallways. Claire greeted every student by name. She remembered birthdays, favorite books, who struggled with reading, who secretly skipped breakfast. To them, she wasn't just a teacher. She was the safe place waiting every morning. Halfway through math class, the principal quietly knocked on her classroom door. "Claire, can I borrow you for a minute?" His expression made her stomach tighten. Outside the classroom, he handed her a thick envelope. It came to the office. No return address? He shook his head. She thanked him and waited until lunch to open it. Inside, one sheet of paper, bold black letters. Final notice of eviction. Her apartment building had been sold. Every tenant had 30 days to leave. Claire read the page 3 times. Then, a fourth. There had to be a mistake. She had never missed rent. Not once. Not in 7 years. Her landlord had always been fair. Almost unbelievably fair. In fact, he had never raised her rent. Not once. In New York, for 5 years, friends constantly joked she had found the last honest landlord in America. She believed them, until now. That evening, the rain became heavier. Claire walked home, carrying groceries beneath an umbrella, barely holding itself together. As she turned the corner, something felt wrong. The entire street had stopped moving. Neighbors stood outside the apartment building, whispering. Police vehicles blocked traffic. Luxury, black SUVs, stretched nearly an entire block. Their engines idled silently beneath the rain. Men in perfectly tailored black suits stood beside each vehicle, motionless, umbrellas perfectly aligned. No one spoke. Claire slowed her pace. Mr. Alvarez hurried toward her. "Claire, what happened?" "I don't know. Is there a fire?" He swallowed nervously. "They said someone bought the building." She frowned. "Tonight?" He nodded. "Cash." Before Claire could ask another question, every suited man stepped aside simultaneously. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled slowly toward the entrance. Its polished surface reflected every flashing police light, like liquid obsidian. The car stopped. No one moved. One bodyguard opened the rear door. Expensive Italian shoes touched wet pavement. Then, a man stepped into the rain. Tall, broad shoulders, perfectly tailored charcoal overcoat, black leather gloves, dark hair combed neatly back. His face was calm, unreadable, not handsome in the ordinary sense, dangerous, like the kind of man whose silence carried more weight than another man's anger. Even before anyone whispered his name, the street somehow knew. People instinctively stepped backward. Police officers lowered their eyes. A businessman walking past immediately crossed to the opposite sidewalk. Mr. Alvarez whispered, almost soundlessly. "Oh God." Claire looked at him. "Who is he?" The old man's face turned pale. "You've never seen him before?" She shook her head. He answered, without taking his eyes off the stranger. "That's Adrian DeLuca." The name meant nothing to Claire, but judging from everyone else's reaction, it meant everything. Adrian walked toward the building entrance without looking at anyone. Not the police, not the lawyers, not the tenants, not even Claire. One of his attorneys handed him a leather folder. Another produced a fountain pen. Adrian signed one page, closed the folder, then handed the pen back. The attorney announced calmly, "The property has officially transferred ownership." Silence. No applause. No celebration. Only rain. Claire stepped forward despite the fear spreading through the crowd. "Excuse me." Every bodyguard instantly focused on her. She ignored them. "I live here." Adrian finally looked at her. Gray eyes. Cold. Steady. They held hers for only a second. Yet, somehow, it felt much longer. She forced herself to continue. Everyone received eviction notices. His expression never changed. "They're no longer valid." "What?" "The building isn't being emptied." Claire blinked. "I don't understand." "You don't need to." His voice was calm, deep, controlled, not loud. Yet everyone heard every word. She frowned. People deserve an explanation. For the first time, something almost resembling curiosity flickered across Adrian's face. "You ask questions. No one else here is willing to ask. I teach 8-year-olds." She folded her arms. "They ask difficult questions every day." A bodyguard shifted uneasily. Adrian remained perfectly still. Then, something unexpected happened. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Almost. "You'll be receiving a new lease tomorrow." Claire stared. "I don't want special treatment." "You misunderstand." His eyes moved briefly toward the frightened tenants gathered behind her. "No one here is leaving." Murmurs spread through the crowd. People looked at one another in disbelief. Mr. Alvarez crossed himself. Someone began crying quietly. Claire still couldn't understand. Why buy the entire building? Adrian looked directly into her eyes again. For a brief second, the coldness disappeared, replaced by something infinitely heavier. Regret. It was time. Nothing more. He turned, walked back toward the Rolls-Royce. The conversation was over. Claire watched the convoy disappear into the rain. None of it made sense. Not the purchase, not the eviction, not the strange conversation. Most of all, not the way Adrian had looked at her. It wasn't the gaze of a stranger. It wasn't attraction. Or curiosity. It was something much older. As though he had been carrying a memory she had somehow forgotten. Later that night, Claire couldn't sleep. The rain continued, tapping softly against her bedroom window. Just after midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Silence. Then, a man's voice. Calm. Professional. Miss Morgan. Who's this? You should avoid walking home alone tomorrow. Her heartbeat slowed. What? There are people looking for you. Who is this? The line disconnected. Claire stared at the phone. Moments later, another sound reached her. Engines. She pulled back the curtain. Across the street, one black SUV remained parked beneath a flickering street lamp. Its headlights were off, its windows completely black. Someone was inside, watching, not moving, waiting. Claire suddenly remembered Adrian's final words. It was time. She didn't know it yet, but somewhere across New York, a rival mafia family had already placed a price on her life, and Adrian DeLuca had just declared war without firing a single bullet. Claire Morgan had never been afraid of silence. She had spent most of her life alone. After losing her parents before finishing college, silence had become something she understood, a quiet companion that followed her through tiny apartments, late-night lesson plans, and lonely birthday dinners. But this silence felt different. It watched her. The black SUV remained parked across the street until sunrise. Its engine never started. Its headlights never flashed. It simply waited. By 7 o'clock, it was gone. When Claire stepped outside to leave for school, the only evidence it had ever been there was a set of fresh tire tracks glistening in the rain. She told herself she was imagining things. People didn't suddenly become targets. Not elementary school teachers. Not women whose biggest concern yesterday had been grading spelling quizzes. Yet the unknown caller's warning refused to leave her mind. There are people looking for you. Her students noticed she was distracted. You forgot to smile today, little Mia whispered during reading hour. Claire blinked before forcing one onto her face. I'm smiling now. It's not your real smile. Children noticed everything. She knelt beside Mia. I just didn't sleep very well. Mia nodded seriously. My grandma says monsters only come after people who stop smiling. Claire laughed despite herself. I'll remember that. She had no idea how true those words were becoming. When school ended, Claire decided to take a different route home. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was instinct, maybe fear, or maybe she simply wanted to prove the mysterious phone call had gotten into her head. She crossed 3 extra blocks before reaching Lexington Avenue. The sidewalks were crowded. Office workers hurried towards subway entrances. Street musicians filled the air with jazz. For the first time all day, Claire relaxed. Then she noticed them. 2 men, dark jackets, walking 20 feet behind her. She turned into a bookstore. They followed. She exited through another door. So did they. Her heartbeat quickened. She crossed against a yellow light. They crossed too. No coincidence. They were following her. Claire quickened her pace. The city suddenly felt enormous. Every face became unfamiliar. Every passing stranger looked indifferent. She reached for her phone. No signal. A construction crew had blocked half the street. The 2 men began closing the distance. One reached into his coat. Claire didn't wait to see what he was reaching for. She ran. Rain soaked her hair within seconds. She pushed through crowds, nearly collided with a cyclist, turned another corner. A dead end. The alley stretched only 30 feet before ending at a brick wall. She spun around. The men entered slowly. Neither looked hurried. Neither smiled. One removed leather gloves, finger by finger. Miss Morgan. His voice was polite. We only need a conversation. Claire backed away. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. We never make mistakes. The taller man produced a suppressed handgun, not waving it, simply holding it, casually, as though it belonged there. Claire's legs refused to move. The alley suddenly became impossibly quiet. Rain echoed between brick walls. One of the men took another step. I'm afraid you'll have to come with us. The sound arrived before the cars. Tir, powerful engines, black SUVs exploded into the mouth of the alley. Brakes screamed. Doors flew open. 12 armed men emerged in perfect formation. Not shouting, not panicking, moving with terrifying precision. The two gunmen immediately raised their weapons. One never had the chance to fire. A suppressed shot cracked through the rain. His gun shattered in his hand. Another bodyguard tackled the second attacker before he could react. Within 4 seconds, the alley was over. Claire stood frozen, unable to breathe. One bodyguard opened the rear door of the lead SUV. Adrian DeLuca stepped out. His charcoal coat darkened beneath the rain. Gray eyes swept over the alley once, noticing everything. Broken weapon, blood, Claire's shaking hands. He walked directly toward her. She expected questions. Instead, he removed his own coat and placed it gently around her shoulders. It was still warm. You should have gone home. Claire stared at him. You knew? I warned you. You knew this would happen? His jaw tightened. I knew they would try. She stepped back. Who are they? They're alive. What? The fact that they found you means they're still alive. Claire frowned. What are you talking about? For the first time, something resembling frustration crossed Adrian's face. Not at her, at himself. He had said too much. Police sirens echoed nearby. Adrian glanced toward the street. They're 3 minutes away. Claire folded her arms. I'm not leaving until someone explains what's happening. You don't have 3 minutes. I have every right to know why armed men just tried to kidnap me. He looked at her, long enough for the rain to gather on his eyelashes, then quietly said, They weren't kidnapping you. Her stomach dropped. What? They were taking you somewhere to die. Silence. The words settled like ice. Claire searched his face for any sign he was exaggerating. There wasn't one. Only certainty. Only cold reality. You don't even know me, she whispered. Adrian answered immediately. I know enough. What does that mean? You teach 2nd grade. You volunteer every Thanksgiving. You still buy flowers for your parents every April. You skip lunch whenever one of your students forgets theirs. Claire's blood ran cold. He continued calmly. You've lived in apartment 4B for 7 years. You always read before bed. You leave your kitchen light on when you travel. You never lock your bedroom window. Every sentence landed harder than the last. How do you know all that? Adrian didn't answer. He simply looked at her. That silence told her more than words ever could. You've been watching me. His expression remained unreadable. No. Claire almost laughed. Don't lie to me. I've been protecting you. The difference should have mattered. To Claire. It didn't. You've been spying on me. I've been making sure you stayed alive. I never asked you to. No, you had no right. Something flickered behind Adrian's calm expression. Guilt, I know. For the first time since meeting him, the feared mafia boss looked almost human. Almost. A bodyguard approached. Boss. Adrian never looked away from Claire. What? We found another team. His voice remained calm. Where? 2 blocks north. Alive? 1. Bring him. Claire stared. You can just order people around like that? I can. Who are you? His answer came without hesitation. The man standing between you and a grave. The surviving attacker was dragged into the alley minutes later. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye. He looked terrified, not of death. Oaf, Adrian. Adrian crouched until their eyes met. His voice barely rose above the rain. Who sent you? Silence. The prisoner swallowed. Adrian nodded once. One bodyguard handed him a lighter. Without emotion, Adrian flicked the flame beneath a photograph removed from the attacker's pocket. Claire's face stared back from the picture. The edges curled into ash. Adrian spoke softly. Last chance. The man's breathing became uneven. Russo. Adrian remained still. Say it again. Vittorio Russo. Claire watched confusion spread across Adrian's face. Not surprise. Recognition. As if he had expected another name. That worried him far more. Adrian stood. Take him. The bodyguards disappeared with the prisoner. Claire looked from Adrian to the burning photograph. My picture? There were more. How many? He didn't answer. Adrian. His gray eyes finally met hers again. Hundreds. Claire felt sick. Hundreds? They've been watching you. For how long? He hesitated. Long enough. She whispered. Why? I don't know. You always know. This time, his jaw clenched. I don't. Lightning illuminated the alley. Thunder rolled across Manhattan. Claire suddenly realized something. You knew exactly where to find me. Adrian remained silent. You arrived less than a minute after they cornered me. Still nothing. You were following me. No. Then how? His answer was almost impossible to hear. I never stopped. Claire froze. What? I never stopped watching. Those 6 words changed everything. The rain, the apartment, the paid rent, the warning call, the black SUV. None of it had been coincidence. Someone had been quietly guarding every ordinary day of her life. Someone dangerous enough to terrify the city. Someone lonely enough to never let her know. Adrian reached toward her, only to stop halfway. His hand hovered inches from hers, then slowly lowered. I know you're frightened. You should be. His honesty shocked her. I'm leaving. You can't. I won't let you control my life. I'm trying to save it. I don't even know who you are. No. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. But I know exactly who you are. Claire searched his eyes. For one impossible second, she saw sadness. Ancien. Heavy. As though he'd spent years carrying a promise that had become far more painful than either of them understood. A second convoy arrived. One of Adrian's men hurried over. They found the apartment. Claire's stomach tightened. What apartment? 4 armed men. They were waiting inside. Claire's breathing stopped. My apartment? The bodyguard nodded. They entered 23 minutes ago. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. He had been too late. If Claire had gone straight home, she would already be dead. He looked back at her. You can't go back there, she whispered. Then where do I go? For the first time, Adrian answered without hesitation. With me. Claire stared at the man every newspaper called a monster. Everything inside her screamed to run. Yet, for reasons she couldn't explain, standing beside Adrian DeLuca felt infinitely safer than walking away from him. She didn't trust him, not even close. But she believed one terrifying truth. If Adrian hadn't arrived, she would never have left that alley alive. As another flash of lightning split the New York sky, Adrian opened the SUV door and quietly said, Claire, this war has already found you, and I'm the only reason you're still breathing. The black SUV pulled away from the alley without attracting attention. No police escort, no flashing lights, just 3 identical vehicles disappearing into the Manhattan rain like shadows returning to the darkness. Claire sat silently in the back seat. She kept as much distance as possible between herself and Adrian DeLuca. Neither of them spoke. Rain streaked across the tinted windows, turning New York into a blurred painting of lights and reflections. For nearly 20 minutes, only silence existed between them. Not awkward silence, heavy silence, the kind that waited for the truth. Finally, Claire broke it. Where are you taking me? Adrian never looked away from the window. Somewhere they can't reach you. You keep saying they. They're called the Russo family. I've never heard of them. You weren't supposed to. She folded her arms. And yet, they're trying to kill me. Yes. Why? I don't know. She looked at him sharply. I don't believe you. For the first time since leaving the alley, Adrian turned toward her. I know why they want you. A pause. I don't know why they want you now. The difference mattered. And somehow, it frightened Claire even more. The convoy entered an underground parking garage hidden beneath an ordinary office building in Midtown. Steel gates slid shut behind them. Armed guards stood every 20 feet. Facial recognition scanners. Bulletproof elevators. Everything looked less like a headquarters and more like a fortress. Claire stepped out slowly. This is where you live? No. You work here? No. What is this place? A place no one finds twice. One bodyguard approached. Boss. Adrian nodded once. Report. The apartment is clear. Claire frowned. What do you mean, clear? The bodyguard hesitated. Adrian answered for him. They burned it. Claire felt her knees weaken. My apartment? They wanted us to know there would be nothing to return to. For several seconds, she couldn't breathe. Everything she owned, her books, family photographs, lesson plans, her mother's wedding ring, gone, without a single warning. I'm sorry. The words escaped Adrian quietly. Claire laughed bitterly. You? Yes. You didn't burn my apartment. No. But if I had stayed away from your life. He stopped. Claire stared. None of this would have happened. That was the first crack she'd seen in him. Not fear. Not anger. Regret. Real regret. An elegant woman in her 40s approached. Dark tailored suit. Silver hair. Calm eyes. Mr. DeLuca. He nodded. Maria, this way. Maria smiled gently at Claire. You must be exhausted. Claire didn't answer. She wasn't sure whom to trust anymore. Maria seemed to understand. I don't expect you to trust anyone here. She handed Claire a cup of hot tea. But you should drink something. Claire accepted it almost automatically. The warmth steadied her trembling hands. Maria led Claire into a private guest suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the rain-soaked skyline. A fireplace burned quietly. Fresh clothes waited neatly folded on the bed. Claire looked around uneasily. Who prepared this? Maria smiled. It has always been ready. Claire looked up. What? Maria realized she'd said too much. Nothing. No. Claire stepped closer. What do you mean, always? Maria hesitated, then quietly answered. Mr. DeLuca plans for everything. Across the hall, Adrian stood alone inside his office. One entire wall displayed digital security feeds from across the city. Dozens of screens, parking garages, safe houses, warehouses, private roads. Every camera monitored part of his empire. Yet, only one screen held his attention. Claire. She sat beside the fireplace, staring into the flames. Lost, confused. Alone, his closest advisor, entered quietly. Luca Moretti, former military, now Adrian's head of security. You should sleep. Adrian didn't move. I'll sleep after Russo is dead. Luca crossed his arms. You've been saying that for 10 years. And you've never sounded this personal. Silence. Then Adrian finally spoke. They found her. Luca nodded. They shouldn't have. I know. They've been searching for something. Adrian's jaw tightened. They finally know where to look. Do you want me to tell her? No. She deserves the truth. Not yet. Luca Sahil. You've hidden it for 5 years. I'll hide it another 5 if I have to. She'll hate you. Adrian's answer came almost immediately. I know. And you'll still protect her? Until my last breath. Claire couldn't sleep. Everything happened too quickly. She walked toward the massive bookshelf lining one wall of the suite. Hundreds of books. Many were classics she loved. Jane Eyre. To Kill a Mockingbird. Little Women. She pulled one from the shelf. A folded note slipped onto the floor. She frowned. The handwriting looked old. She unfolded it. She still reads before bed. Claire stared. Another note fell from a different book. Replace the broken lamp. Before winter. Her breathing became shallow. She grabbed another. She likes jasmine tea. Another. New winter coat. Blue suits her better. Another. She skipped dinner again. Claire's hands began shaking. These weren't random notes. They were observations. About her. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Years worth. Someone had documented her life. Every habit. Every routine. Every quiet moment she believed belonged only to herself. She stormed out of the room. Bodyguards instinctively stepped aside. Adrian stood at the end of the hallway, speaking quietly with Luca. Claire didn't wait. She slapped the stack of notes against his chest. What is this? Adrian looked down, then closed his eyes. For one long second, he didn't answer. You watched me. His silence confirmed everything. You wrote these? No. Who did? My security team. Claire laughed in disbelief. You assigned people to follow me? Yes. For 5 years? Longer. She stared at him. You've been stalking me. No. His voice remained calm. I've been making sure you survived. I never asked for that. I know. I never even knew you existed. I know. Then why? His eyes finally met hers. Because he could lie to everyone else, not to her. Because I made a promise. A promise to who? He didn't answer. Adrian. Still silence. Claire's voice cracked. You owe me that much. He took one slow breath. Your father. The hallway became perfectly still. Claire blinked. My father died when I was 19. I know. You knew my father? Yes. No. She shook her head. That's impossible. It isn't. My father was a firefighter. I know. He never had anything to do with people like you. Adrian looked away. You're wrong. 20 years earlier, a warehouse fire had consumed an abandoned shipping terminal in Brooklyn. Gunfire. Explosion. Chaos. A young Adrian DeLuca, barely 23, had been trapped beneath collapsing steel beams. His men believed he was already dead. Smoke filled the building. Nobody went inside, except one firefighter. Daniel Morgan, Claire's father. He didn't ask who Adrian was. He didn't care. He saw someone trapped. So he went back into the burning building. Twice. Adrian survived. Daniel nearly didn't. When Adrian tried to repay him weeks later, Daniel refused every dollar. He accepted only one promise. If anything ever happens to me, protect my little girl. Claire couldn't move. No. Adrian continued quietly. I promised. My father never told me. He wouldn't. He hated criminals. He hated violence. Adrian nodded. That's why I respected him. Claire felt tears gathering. My father. He saved your life. Yes. And 5 years later, Adrian looked directly into her eyes. He died, Claire whispered. The apartment. Adrian nodded once. I started paying your rent the following month. The hallway fell silent. Every bodyguard respectfully looked away. Claire suddenly understood. 5 years. Every rent payment, every repair, every quiet act of kindness she had mistaken for luck. None of it had been luck. It had been a promise, one man honoring another. So, she whispered, this was never about me. Adrian answered immediately. It started that way. The words hung between them. Claire searched his face. And now, he looked at her for a very long time. His expression remained composed. But his eyes betrayed him. It stopped being only about the promise. Neither of them spoke, because they both understood what he hadn't said. A loud alarm suddenly echoed throughout the building. Red emergency lights flooded the hallway. Every bodyguard reached for concealed weapons. Luca pressed a finger against his earpiece. His face drained of color. Boss. Adrian turned instantly. What happened? The safe house in Queens. What about it? They attacked. Survivors? None. Claire looked around in confusion. Adrian's voice became dangerously quiet. How? Luca swallowed. They knew the access codes. Someone inside Adrian's organization had betrayed him before anyone could react. Another guard sprinted toward them. Boss? What? He handed Adrian a sealed evidence bag. Inside, a single photograph. Claire, standing outside her classroom, taken that morning. On the back, written in elegant handwriting. Next time, we won't miss. Adrian stared at the message. His face remained calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that frightened every man who worked for him. He slowly folded the photograph, looked toward the rain-covered skyline beyond the glass, then quietly said, "Lock the building." No one leaves. No one enters. Luca understood immediately. You think the traitor is already inside. Adrian's gray eyes hardened. I know they are. Claire suddenly realized something terrifying. The safest place in New York had just become the most dangerous. The security doors slammed shut with a metallic roar that echoed through every floor of the safe house. Steel shutters sealed the windows. Elevators locked automatically. Emergency lights painted the hallways crimson. For the first time since Claire had met Adrian DeLuca, she saw genuine concern in the eyes of the men who followed him. Not fear of dying, fear of failing him. Luca checked the digital security map. Every entrance is sealed. Adrian nodded. The communications? Encrypted. The exits? Locked. Claire looked between them. You're trapping us inside. Adrian turned toward her. I'm trapping the traitor. One by one, Adrian's captains gathered inside the underground conference room. No one spoke. No one dared. The room itself felt more like a war bunker than an office. A massive oak table stretched across polished black marble floors. Screens displayed security feeds from every corner of Manhattan. Rain lashed against reinforced glass. High above them, Claire stood quietly near the doorway. She didn't belong here, yet somehow everything happening revolved around her. Adrian remained standing. His hands rested lightly on the back of his chair. He never raised his voice. I have one question. Silence. Who told Russo where she was? No one answered. His gray eyes slowly moved from one face to another. Each man lowered his gaze. One by one, until only one pair of eyes remained locked with his. Marco Vitale, 45, head of logistics, a loyal soldier for nearly 20 years. Adrian held his stare for several seconds, then simply said, Leave. Marco frowned. What? Everyone else stays. Confusion spread around the room. Marco laughed nervously. You think it was me? Adrian didn't answer. I've served you since you were 26. Silence. I buried your brother. Nothing. I would never betray you. Adrian finally spoke. I know. Marco blinked. Then why am I leaving? Because if you stay, Adrian's voice became impossibly calm. You'll die with everyone else. Before anyone understood what he meant, the entire conference room exploded. Glass shattered inward. The lights went black. The deafening blast threw Claire across the floor. Dust filled the air. Screams echoed through the smoke. Gunfire erupted almost instantly. Not from outside, from inside the building. Down, Adrian lunged toward Claire. His body slammed into hers just as bullets tore through the conference room wall. Concrete exploded above them. Fragments rained across the marble floor. Claire couldn't hear anything except a violent ringing inside her ears. Adrian wrapped one arm around her shoulders. The other calmly drew his pistol. 3 precise shots. 3 bodies collapsed somewhere inside the smoke. He never looked. He simply knew. Luca shouted through his radio. Internal breach. Level 3 compromised. They're already inside. Adrian's expression darkened. The traitor opened the east tunnel. Claire looked at him. There was another entrance? There always is. Bodyguards formed a defensive circle around Adrian and Claire. They moved with flawless precision. Every hallway became a battlefield. Automatic gunfire echoed through the underground corridors. Emergency sprinklers activated. Water poured from the ceiling, mixing with blood across polished marble. The world became flashing lights, smoke, rain, and violence. Claire stumbled as Adrian pulled her through the chaos. I can't keep up. Without hesitation, he stopped, turned, then lifted her into his arms. She froze. What are you doing? Running. I can walk. No. His tone allowed no argument. They'll shoot your legs first. He carried her effortlessly through corridors filled with gunfire. His expensive black suit was soaked with rainwater and blood, yet his grip around her never faltered. For the first time, Claire wasn't thinking about the Mafia boss. She was thinking about the man carrying her as if losing her wasn't an option. Behind them, Luca covered their retreat. Move. Explosions shook the lower levels. One bodyguard collapsed. Another immediately took his position. No hesitation. No panic. Absolute loyalty. Claire looked over Adrian's shoulder. They're dying. His voice remained quiet. They already accepted that. For you? No. He glanced at her briefly. For the promise. The words struck Claire harder than the explosions. Was that really all this still was? A promise? Or had that promise become something neither of them wanted to admit? They reached a reinforced steel door. Adrian entered a security code. The door opened onto an underground tunnel. Concrete walls stretched into darkness. Claire stared. You have tunnels beneath Manhattan? I have many things beneath Manhattan. The tunnel echoed with distant gunfire. Adrian finally set Claire down. She immediately stepped back. You've been lying to me. He looked at her quietly. About what? You kept saying this was because of my father. It is. But not only because of him. Silence. I saw your face upstairs. What about it? You were terrified. I was. For me. He didn't answer. You weren't protecting a promise. You were protecting me. Adrian looked away. His control was beginning to crack. I failed once. Claire frowned. What do you mean? I promised your father. His voice lowered almost to a whisper. That nothing would ever happen to you. He closed his eyes briefly. And today, someone reached you. Claire realized something. Adrian wasn't angry because Russo attacked. He was angry because he believed he had failed. Suddenly, a gunshot echoed behind them. Luca staggered into the tunnel. Blood spread rapidly across his shoulder. They're coming. Adrian caught him before he fell. How many? 20. Another cough. Maybe more. Adrian nodded once. Go. Luca looked toward Claire. Then back at Adrian. No. Adrian's eyes hardened. That's an order. Luca smiled weakly. I've ignored your orders before. You've never ignored this one. Another explosion shook the tunnel. Luca looked at Claire again. Then quietly nodded. I'll hold them. Claire immediately shook her head. No. Luca smiled sadly. If I don't, they'll reach both of you. He removed the wedding ring from his finger, handed it to Adrian. Give this to Sophia. Adrian stared at the ring. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then, Adrian embraced his oldest friend. A rare gesture. Brief, silent, powerful. Luca stepped backward, raised his rifle, and disappeared into the smoke. Claire watched him go. Hildy. Adrian didn't answer. He knows. You just let him. I trusted him. The difference was heartbreaking. Far behind them, automatic gunfire erupted again. Then grenades. Then silence. Claire lowered her eyes. Luca had kept his promise. The tunnel finally opened beneath an abandoned church overlooking the Hudson River. Rain hammered the broken stained glass windows. Candles flickered beside forgotten pews. The old sanctuary had long been abandoned, or so it appeared. Several luxury vehicles already waited outside. More bodyguards. Another safe location. Claire wrapped her arms around herself. She suddenly felt exhausted. Everything familiar had disappeared in less than 24 hours. Her apartment, her classroom, her ordinary life. Gone. Adrian quietly approached. You should rest. Claire looked at him. I can't. You need sleep. I need the truth. He remained silent. You said someone reached me today. Yes, but you looked like you'd already lost me. His breathing slowed. Because she was right. He had. Long before today. Adrian walked toward one of the broken, stained glass windows. Rain blew softly through the empty church. His reflection looked lonely, almost broken. I've watched you graduate. Claire's breath caught. I watched your first day teaching. Silence. I watched you cry after your mother died. Another pause. I watched every birthday you spent alone. Claire felt tears gathering. He continued. I kept telling myself I was protecting a promise. His voice finally cracked. But somewhere along the way, he looked directly at her. I forgot where the promise ended. The confession hung in the empty church. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. For one impossible moment. The feared mafia boss looked less like the most powerful man in New York, and more like the loneliest. Before Claire could answer, a bodyguard burst through the church doors. Boss. Adrian turned instantly. What happened? We intercepted Russo's encrypted transmission. What did he say? The bodyguard hesitated, then quietly answered. He doesn't want Miss Morgan anymore. Claire frowned. What? The guard swallowed. He wants you. Adrian's expression became unreadable. For what? He said. The bodyguard looked down at the intercepted message. Bring Adrian alive. Claire stared. Alive? Adrian slowly smiled. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't happiness. It was the terrifying smile of a man who had finally understood his enemy's plan. Russo had never been hunting Claire. Claire was only the bait. The true target had always been Adrian DeLuca. The old church fell silent. Rain drummed steadily against the broken stained glass, while thunder rolled across the Hudson River. Claire stared at Adrian. You. She could barely find her voice. They were never after me. Adrian didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the encrypted message displayed on Luca's tablet. Then he quietly folded the screen shut. No. Claire felt almost angry. I lost my home. My students don't know where I am. People died, and none of it was really about me. Adrian slowly turned toward her. It became about you. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. Outside, black SUVs formed a protective circle around the abandoned church. Every remaining DeLuca soldier checked weapons in complete silence. Nobody laughed. Nobody smoked. Nobody looked relaxed. They all understood. The next battle would decide whether the DeLuca empire survived or disappeared forever. Marco approached Adrian. We found Russo. Adrian looked up. Location: the old harbor. Claire frowned. The abandoned shipping docks? Marco nodded. He wants a meeting. Adrian almost smiled. No, he wants an execution. Claire stepped forward. Then don't go. Everyone looked at her. She swallowed. It's exactly what he wants. Adrian walked closer. Only inches separated them. His voice remained calm. If I don't go, he'll keep hunting you. I can disappear. You won't. I can. You'll spend the rest of your life running. I don't care. I do. The words escaped before he could stop them. Silence filled the church. Neither of them looked away. You shouldn't, Claire whispered. You barely know me. Adrian's gray eyes softened. I've known you longer than you know. You've watched me. Yes. You've protected me. Yes. You've lied to me. A long pause. Yes. Claire nodded slowly. Then tell me one truth. Adrian inhaled deeply. Just once in his life, the feared Mafia boss chose honesty over strategy. I fell in love with you. No hesitation. No excuse. No attempt to hide behind the promise. I tried not to. I told myself it was loyalty. I told myself it was gratitude. I told myself I was honoring your father. Another quiet breath. I loved you long before I allowed myself to admit it. The church became perfectly still. Claire felt tears filling her eyes, not because of the confession, because she believed him. She remembered every lonely birthday, every unexpected repair in her apartment, every rent payment, every anonymous act of kindness. He had never asked for anything, never appeared, never expected gratitude. He simply stayed, watching, protecting, waiting. Claire stepped closer. So why now? Because they found you. No. She shook her head. Why tell me now? Adrian looked away toward the rain. Because I may not survive tonight. The words hit harder than any explosion. Claire reached for his hand, instinctively, then stopped. Only inches separated their fingers, exactly as they always had, almost touching, never crossing the line. Adrian quietly closed the distance himself. Their hands finally met. Warm, steady, real, for the first time in 5 years. The promise became something neither of them could deny. Night settled over New York. The abandoned harbor disappeared beneath thick fog. Cargo cranes stood like giants against the skyline. Floodlights reflected across black water. Dozens of black SUVs waited on opposite sides of the empty dock. One belonged to Adrian, the other to Vittorio Russo. Russo stepped forward first. Elegant, sweet. Silver hair, calm smile. You came. Adrian answered simply. I said I would. Russo laughed. You always were predictable. You killed good men. You burned an innocent woman's home. And now, his smile widened. You've fallen in love. Adrian remained perfectly still. You mistake protection for weakness. Russo shook his head. No, I mistake love for weakness. Claire watched from inside, an armored SUV, several hundred feet away. Marco refused to let her leave. You stay here. I can help. No, I have to. Marco looked directly at her. The boss survived 20 years because he never broke a promise. Tonight, he'll either keep one or die trying. Back on the dock, Russo slowly applauded. I searched for your weakness for years. I never imagined it would be an elementary school teacher. Adrian's face never changed. You should have left her alone. Russo smiled. You should have left your heart alone. A gunshot shattered the silence. Then another. Chaos erupted. Both families opened fire simultaneously. Bullets ripped through shipping containers. Glass exploded. Black SUVs became moving shields. The harbor transformed into a battlefield. Marco shouted, "Move, Claire." The armored vehicle accelerated. Then, a rocket slammed into the pavement ahead. The SUV flipped sideways. Metal screamed across concrete. Claire crawled from the wreckage, coughing through smoke. Everything around her burned. Someone grabbed her wrist. Not Adrian. One of Russo's men got her. Across the dock, Adrian heard her scream. Time stopped. He looked up, saw Claire being dragged toward another vehicle. Something inside him broke. The calm disappeared. Years of discipline. Gone. For the first time, the Mafia Boss lost control. Every DeLuca soldier froze. They had never seen this man angry. Adrian walked directly through open gunfire. Bullets shattered concrete around him. He never slowed, never ducked, never hesitated. Russo's men fell. Not because Adrian was reckless, because he had become unstoppable. Claire struggled desperately. The kidnapper pressed a gun against her head. Another step, and she dies. Adrian stopped. Rain poured down between them. Russo smiled. There he is, the real Adrian, the man who would burn his empire for one woman. Claire shook her head. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't do this. Adrian looked only at her. Nothing else existed. Not the guns. Not Russo. Not the war. Only Claire. Then, very quietly, he placed his pistol on the ground. Every DeLuca soldier stared in disbelief. Their boss had surrendered. For here, Russo laughed. I knew it. He walked toward Adrian confidently. You finally became human. As Russo reached for the weapon, Claire noticed something. A loose steel cable above the dock, still attached to a damaged shipping crane. She remembered her father's words from years ago. Sometimes, saving someone means acting before you're ready. Without thinking, she slammed her elbow into the kidnapper's ribs, grabbed the emergency release lever beside her. The massive crane shifted violently. Steel cables snapped. A 40-foot cargo container crashed directly between Adrian and Russo. The impact threw everyone backward. Gunfire erupted again. Adrian reached Claire first. He pulled her into his arms. Are you hurt? She laughed through tears. You surrendered. I know. You idiot. I know. She wrapped both arms around him. He held her tightly, almost desperately. The embrace lasted only seconds, but after years of silence, it felt like forever. Russo staggered from the smoke with one final pistol. He aimed directly at Claire. Adrian reacted instantly. He stepped in front of her. The shot echoed across the harbor. Blood spread slowly across Adrian's shoulder. He didn't fall. Instead, he calmly raised the pistol Claire had dropped moments earlier. One shot. Russo collapsed. The war ended. Rain washed blood across the concrete. Police sirens approached in the distance. Marco smiled weakly. It's over. Adrian looked at him. No, it's finally beginning. 3 months later, spring returned to Manhattan. Children laughed outside PS 184 Elementary School. Claire stood in her classroom arranging colorful paper butterflies across the bulletin board. Life had changed, yet somehow, it also hadn't. She was still teaching, still smiling, still believing kindness mattered. Outside, a familiar black Rolls-Royce waited quietly across the street. This time, it wasn't hiding. Adrian leaned casually against the car. No bodyguards, no weapons, only a bouquet of white lilies. Claire walked outside after the final school bell. She crossed the sidewalk slowly. So? She smiled. "You're watching me again?" Adrian almost smiled back. "No." "What are you doing?" He offered her the flowers. "I'm waiting." "For what?" He looked into her eyes. "For you to choose me." Claire laughed softly. "You know, you could have just asked 5 years ago. I wasn't worthy." And now, he reached for her hand. "No hesitation, no fear. I spend every day trying to be." Claire intertwined her fingers with his. Traffic continued flowing around them. Children laughed nearby. The city moved forward. For everyone else, it looked like an ordinary afternoon. Only they knew it had taken 5 years. A broken promise, a mafia war, and countless silent acts of love to arrive at one simple moment. Claire rested her head against his shoulder. "So, what happens now?" Adrian looked toward the endless New York skyline. Then, back at the woman he had loved in silence for so long. Now, he smiled, a real one this time. "We finally stop surviving and start living." As the Rolls-Royce disappeared into the golden light of sunset, neither of them noticed the black motorcycle parked 2 blocks away. Its rider lowered a camera, snapped one final photograph, and quietly whispered into a hidden radio, "We found Mrs. DeLuca." The transmission ended. Somewhere far beyond New York, someone else smiled. Their story was over. But another war had just begun.